you get to see the countdown. Does it show you the countdown when it's counting
Yeah, it
down?
does.
It didn't used to do that. So we have to give it a couple of seconds so that the internet can catch up to Restream and Restream can connect to the internet in all the places. And we are now live. Welcome everyone to episode 10 of season 5 of the Level Up Your Wealth podcast, where we talk about the gaming industry from a business perspective. One of your hosts, Marcus Howard. Unfortunately, Mario couldn't be here this week, but we are thrilled to speak, or I guess I am since he's not here. Collective we, the royal we, are thrilled to speak with Tina and Karina from Simply Sweet Games. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having us.
Awesome. We normally play a game of rock, paper, scissors with one person. I don't know if you all are interested in doing that. Maybe we can just show your game in lieu of doing that, if you're comfortable doing that.
We'd be happy to have you show our game. We sent you a little short sort of a sneak peek of what's coming up for our closed alpha. So love to share that with the audience.
All right, we'll do that just to get things kicked off. And while we're doing that, if you're tuning in live, please let us know where you're tuning in from. We'd love to give you a shout out. Let's see, we got the link here. Thank you. Click that. Ooh, other link. This link, here we go.
You can do the thing, Marcus. I believe
I
in
can
you.
do it. I can do it.
It's super hot from the iron, the fire. We just cooked this up for you for this show.
Thank you.
And I'm so excited for you to take a look at this.
Okay, so I'm sharing my screen now here. Let me do. They moved everything in Restream. Okay, can you see it now? Nope, where did it go? Turn it back on. Now you should be able to see it. Everybody can see it?
There we go.
We can see it.
Okay, all right. Let me back over here. And we'll play it.
The enchanting world of Crisscross Castle is an adventure word game. It tells a spellbinding story about restoring magic to words and defending the world against the darkness of ignorance. When a nefarious group known as the Illiterati steals the very essence of written language, they erase the text and scrolls and books, utterly blank, thus plunging the whole world into darkness. However, a wise and powerful figure known as the Script Sage channels the last remnants of her magic to summon a beacon. Now, the realm waits for a champion, nay, a wordsmith, to restore literacy to the realm.
That's awesome. I enjoy playing the demo. I had a lot of fun with it. So thanks for putting that together. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. This is early alpha footage. Please expect bugs and visual glitches. It feels like things are coming together really quickly, and I could not be prouder of the team and the level of quality and attention to detail that we've been able to execute on for the last, I want to say 10 months we've been jamming on this together.
Awesome. And we're going to circle back around to this, all right? But we're going to go back in time. So Tina and Karina, can you talk a little bit about how you got into the industry and then how the two of you got connected? And then we'll shift over to you starting your studio and then get back to the game.
Sure, yeah. It's kind of a fun story, actually. For me, the getting into the industry is short and sweet. It was an accident. I got laid off. I was a project manager in the software development space, breadwinner, 3 children and a husband at home to support because my husband was an at-home dad. And Electronic Arts was an employer of choice in Vancouver. So I very much fell into the industry by accident and very quickly fell in love with the people and the dynamics and what the industry was all about. And that was back in 2003. And then fast forward COVID era, a lot of the work that I've been doing, I got laid off after 14 years at EA, and I started doing a lot of work related to cultural inclusion. And I've always been pretty big on philanthropy, and so is Karina, and go figure, that's how we originally met. She was doing really beautiful work with some nonprofits in Vancouver, invited me to do some talks. We met virtually, we met in person, and we realized we needed to follow our dreams. We had a mission to achieve and some really good skills to bring to that mission. So I'll let you tell her tell a little bit more about it. But that's the sneak peek of my story.
Awesome. How about you, Karina? And
It's a
Karina
beautiful
and I go
story.
back for, quite a
yeah,
ways.
we
But yeah,
do.
please.
What's up, Marcus?
You know a little bit about her story. Let's share with the audience.
I got into the industry at a relatively young age. It's my only career that I've had. I got into the industry when I was 19 because I was kicked out of my house. As an adolescent, I was not on the right path, let's say, but I found my way eventually. And that was through this medium of creating content. So when I got kicked out of my house, I needed to act very quickly, react to my situation and environment changing. And I went straight into the first skill that I had, which was graphic design at that time. So I made t-shirts, I made calendars, I did flash games, I did everything that I could to make a bit of money. And from this necessity, I was connected with a wonderful woman in games at that time, founding the first female-led studio in Vancouver. And it was Silicon Sisters, spearheaded by Brenda Bailey and Kirsten Forbes. And I tell this story because it really gave me a vision for what the industry could be. And that was when I was 19. So that was 17 years ago.
Wow. And then you ended up doing some indie work. You know that we had worked a handful of times together over the years. Tina, I think I mentioned this to you. I have an identical twin brother, and he and I built a game discovery platform. And so that's how we had the privilege and the opportunity to work with Karina.
Very cool. No, I didn't actually remember that story. That's very interesting.
So the two of you meet at this virtual event.
Yeah.
I know that Karina, since the time that Malcolm and I worked with her, had done a lot of public speaking. So I assume that's how the two of you cross paths.
Yeah, we were at GDC
speaking at that event.
23. We were at GDC 23. We were both speakers, and we kept bumping into each other at parties. At speaker parties. And in those environments, you start getting really real, you start having really good conversations. And we realized Karina is the same age as my eldest daughter. We're a generation apart, but we are so well aligned in our values and in our vision and in what we saw going through, over a decade and a half of being in the industry, right? We both have a very similar amount of experience, came at it from very different angles, but saw a lot of similar things. And we, what's happening with all the layoffs in the last few years, both of these things really hurt our hearts. We thought, no, we need to do something here. There's gender representation, there's diverse representation issues in the industry. We need to show good examples that we can do this, right? And then the whole issue of sustainable development, all these layoffs are unnecessary. It doesn't need to be that way. I know it's corporate greed, it's lack of planning, it's short-sightedness. I mean, we didn't see Nintendo doing mass layoffs. Why not?
Right.
Why do people stay there so long and love it so much? And why do they build amazing games for everyone? That's what we're building, games for everyone.
Yeah.
We're so aligned with that mission.
You've done it. You're at the early stages of that now with Crisscross Castle. Can you tell us in the audience what the inspiration was for that game?
I'm going to I know Karina's got a dog that's giving her a hard time, but I'm going to let her take this
okay
because it's her baby. She's our creator.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, it's all of our babies now. Sorry about that. My puppy is just trying to do her job right now. She thinks there's a threatening figure outside and needs to alert everyone. So the inspiration for Crisscross Castle, it's a word game, and we're doing our research into some of the word games that currently exist and comparing them to the board games that used to be very popular in the early 2000s. And we chose the word genre because we saw that as a segment or a niche of puzzle gaming, it was a growing genre. And we thought, well, hey, we could do something here. Words really do matter. I've got nieces and nephews younger than 9 years old. And I know Tina's got a grandchild who's about 8 years old. Mm-hmm. It's so cute, by the way, Marcus. Her grandchild, Sadie, has invested into our company. She gave us a quarter, and so she's one of
$2.
our
$2.
$2. Sorry, $2.
So sent me 2 loonies with the card to help us with the company.
So it's one of our little investors, someone who believes in us, is
Mhm.
a young girl.
Mhm.
And so, words really do matter, especially at that age. And so we're very cognizant of the types of games that we are about to make as Simply Sweet Games. Being a generation apart means that our horizons are challenged differently and enabled. Furthermore, having, Tina is just what a force to be reckoned with. 25-year gap in our generation. We're so aligned. I remember sitting on the stage at one of our, after speaking conference events, and it was like magic. It was appearing out of thin air. So when we think about the portfolio in our book of business for Simply Sweet Games, we really want to consider all ages and all demographics. And so we thought, well, the word game has a lot of meaning and power behind it. And currently we're seeing a number of lapsed leaders in the space. And it is a growing market. And I believe there's room for more subgenres and more indies to come in and to take ownership here. But in terms of what's been happening recently from, comparing the early 2000s of like Bookworm to now, and Bookworm was a popular PopCap game at that time, to now, I just feel like remiss if we didn't try to make something special and iconic out of words.
Yeah.
And then from the business hat side, I'll put my business hat on.
Yeah.
Let's respect the fact that women are a force to be reckoned with when it comes to the revenue opportunities in the gaming industry. There's a huge opportunity here and a gap that we're looking to fulfill. And if we look at the puzzle word space, up to 75% of the demographic playing in North America, those games are female.
Mhm. Yeah, I see, it's so interesting and almost mind-boggling that you continue to see the bias in the narrative about games, that girls and women don't play video games, when the data suggests the exact opposite. It's almost a 50-50 split. And for sure, I believe, and I'm sure you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that women are one of the number one financial drivers of revenue in the
Yeah.
gaming industry.
Exactly. I mean, the sad news is that there's not enough of these things being measured. It's really hard to get this data. For example, I was trying to research how many women founders or leaders there are today running studios. The data doesn't exist. We're not measuring some of the things that do matter, including what you just pointed out. I'm pretty sure if we get and dug into the details, we discover women are contributing more than 50% of the revenue, probably closer to 55% of the revenue.
Yeah. Yeah. How does the saying go? What is it? You can't fix what you don't measure, or something.
Measure what matters. Not fix what you
Yeah.
don't know. Yeah, you got to measure what matters.
Yeah. So your team is distributed. Obviously, you were in 2 different locations here in the podcast. I'm sure you operate like this as well. How many people are on that team, and what does distributed look like? Like, is
Yeah.
it mostly in Canada? Like, help us understand.
Sure. So when we talk distributed, we're talking the global team. So we are a remote team. All of our team members work from home. We get together periodically in person to
Mhm.
collaborate. I'm based in Osoyoos in the Okanagan of British Columbia. All of our employees are based in British Columbia, Canada. The rest of the team is near Carina. They're all in the area of the Vancouver area, an area that we would call in Canada the Lower Mainland. So I'm about 4 hours away from the team in terms of drive. And so I periodically will drive into what I refer to as the city, because I live a little bit more rural. And then I'll hang out with them for a day or two and we'll work together in person. What we mean by distributed, though, really is it's part of that sustainable development model. It's this idea that we need to scale responsibly as an industry. We need to plan for when we need to scale up and scale down and say, do I need to hire these people full time, or is there an opportunity to fulfill a project need? What does that look like? So from a financial and fiscal responsibility and predictability and sustainability, we embrace global teamwork. I have subject matter expertise working with global teams. So for example, right now we're partnering with some teams in Romania to test our game, to do quality assurance. When we scale to move into production, especially once we move into multiple threads, we'll look for external partnerships to strategically shore up our team so that we're not putting a lot of people on the bench and creating a large payroll that we can't sustain.
That makes sense. So you said that Tina, you're in British Columbia and Karina's in Vancouver, or did I
We're
get it
all
wrong?
in British Columbia, Canada, and
Okay.
Vancouver is the main city in British Columbia. It's on the
Okay. Yeah,
coast.
my geography is terrible.
Yeah, that's okay.
I have a funny story about British Columbia. I visited it once. I want to say I was like 24. My brother, my sister, and I had all graduated college, and so my parents said, "Hey, we're gonna go on a family trip to celebrate everyone finally being done with college. We'll bring your grandmother.
Nice.
Make sure you get your passports because we don't want you to get like lost
Okay,
somewhere.
great.
And if you can't do that, at least get your birth certificates." So we did that, but I left my birth certificate at home.
Oh
I
no.
didn't realize that until we got on the plane in Atlanta to fly to Seattle to go get on the boat to go to Alaska and then British Columbia. So we got into British Columbia, and then they almost wouldn't let me like back onto the boat so we could go back to Alaska, except I happened to have an identical twin brother. So I almost got left there, and my mom still tells that story like 10 years
Oh, that's
later.
funny. That's awesome. Identical. So did you? I assume you didn't share ID. They just decided to believe
No,
you.
we're just like, hey, look at the ID. Now look at the two of us. Now look back at the ID and let me on the boat.
Tell me I'm not the same DNA as this dude.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. That's such a cool story.
I was almost an accidental Canadian resident.
Awesome.
So you said you were working on this game now for 8 months. Is that correct?
Since January, so yeah, but a little closer to almost 10 months, but yes.
Okay. Can you
On and
talk
off.
about?
Our team is we work a 4-day work week.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, so it kind of works out. I mean, it feels much shorter now that I think about it, really, because we've gone through a lot with this one game, and where it's taken us is quite surprising.
Yeah. The original approach was a very quick road to a prototype. So we started in January with one engineer and a vision. And we spent about 10 weeks building a core prototype. We brought in an artist to do a tiny, tiny bit of let's remove the producer programmer art and try and put something in there. And then we took that to GDC, and we were part of the Trade Commission Canada outing. We got to be in the Canada booth and showcase the game for a couple of hours. We had over 100 play tests over the course of the 2 days that we were down there. And it validated the core gameplay. Like, we really understood we had something special and it was worth continuing to develop. So at that point, we found another engineer, and a few months later fired an artist, and we've been growing ever since.
So Karina, did you get to go to GDC too? I know that Tina was down there.
Oh, for
Both of you
sure.
were
We were both there at GDC. We set up a little booth. We had a banner. We had 2 hours of show floor time, and that was enough to get so much qualitative feedback. We had an opportunity, and we were invited to pitch to several big companies, including like Xsolla and Tencent, and that gave us more confidence that we were, from the business, building a portfolio of games, that we have something special. But I really need to validate the design and that it's fun to play, because there's a lot that we don't know as a new team, and I have to remind everyone who joins Simply Sweet Games that this is our first IP. This is the first time we're making something together as a team, and I think having this bit of grace is part of the value set that Tina and I have really embodied. It makes for a psychologically safe production.
Yeah.
Are the two of you familiar with, I think it's Women-Led Games? And I forget the lady who runs it.
Charmaine.
Yes. I ran into her at GDC. And I'm
Nice.
terrible with names, so thank you for that.
Charmaine appreciates, I remembered, right?
Yeah, I think that she's helping set up activations, I think even up at Games Beat next week. So I don't know if you've spoken to her about that.
That's right. Actually, because we're not on Steam, otherwise we would have been working with getting that up there. But she's planning on maybe showcasing our little video at the event, which is really exciting, so we can drive some more interest and awareness in what we're building.
Yeah. I saw AARP has a dedicated games page on their website, and I did some research, and I saw that for senior citizens, puzzles and word games are their website is the 6th most popular puzzles and word game site in the world.
Is that right? You know,
Yes.
that's interesting you mentioned that, because I was just sent a link to Karina yesterday, and we were looking at the demographic shift that has happened in the last 20 years. So when I started in the industry, and I don't know if you have the numbers handy there, Karina, I can't remember, but it was a fraction of the percentage today of people, say in the 50, 60 age
50
range
plus.
that are playing, went from in the teens to in the 30 or 40% range.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy, the increase that has happened in the range of demographics. It's a wider range, and
Mm-hmm.
the definition of a hardcore player has so much blurred now, right?
Yeah. So for reference, this we can post this into the chat, private chat, or otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
Today, 29% of the players are 50 or older. In 2004, only 17% of players were aged 50. And in 1999, this number was lower at just 9%. So what does that tell us, right? It tells us that, yes, we are an aging demographic, and games for players age 50 and above, this could be it's an underserved market. It's people play games when they're over 50, I'm pretty sure, right, Tina?
Yeah.
Pretty sure that still happens.
Yes, I can
That's
say
a thing.
that.
I think it's a thing.
And I'm a hardcore Candy Crush player still too. A daily New York Times.
That's another
It
piece
also
of
suggests
Go
that.
ahead. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
No, please.
I get really excited about this because I grew up from, I'm 89. So I grew up during the Pokemon surge. And what it suggests to me now is, as an aging demographic, my generation, when we had Pokemon, red and blue, has transformed into adolescence and an older, mature market. So how interesting is that? The retro feeling of the 1970s and the 1980s is returning now into the more mature market. And how interesting is it that the demographic that seemed to have the most spending authority and spending power, making the most decisions in their family financially, happened to be women. So we really think we've nailed something here. What do women want? And as an aging demographic, how do we find something that's going to stimulate the mind and get you to a more productive experience?
Yeah. Guilt-free, right? Guilt-free fun. I think that there's no reason why, if we've got a game, and most games are like this, right? They're going to improve our mental health. They can improve our cognitive abilities, our memorization skills, our vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
So word and puzzle games and other types of games, let's be frank, can do all of these things and more. So why shouldn't we foster this sense of guilt-free pleasure time? My me time shouldn't be something I feel guilty about.
Yeah. My wife is normally like, let's scale back screen time with the kids, which I agree with. Right, I'm not about like full screen time, but she is much more cooperative about letting them play the video games that I have that are education based. Yes. And games that are games first, and then you happen to learn something that's educational versus like gamified education. I think those are two different things.
Yeah, we'd like to think we're like the Duolingo is a gamified learning. We're a gaming that sort of learnifies.
It's self-learning.
Learnify games.
I made a new word up. What can I say?
Yeah. You should trademark that. That needs to go on the website.
Like you heard it first here with Marcus Howard.
So you've got this concept art. Like, how much of that is from the original art? I know you said that you wanted to test out the, I guess, kind of confirm the fun and then start to layer up, right? Because some folks who are joining this and tuning into podcasts aren't as familiar with game development. So can you talk about like that process? Like, you probably had gray boxes, or just illuminate that for us.
Okay. We've gone through 3 iterations of our art at this point. It took us a while. It's kind of like trying to make fire in a tumultuous environment. Currently in the gaming industry, there's a lot going on, and I won't get into that. But if you're in the know, you're in the know. Our first iteration was just to make sure that the game was fun. So this was the more gray blocky. I would not show this to a friend or family at this time. We just wanted to make sure that it was fun. And when we struck the right balance, we started iterating on the second cycle of our game. That was the build we took to GDC. So when we were at this trade conference with our very limited build, this was at this point 10 weeks of development. We confirmed that the fun is there, but we also received that qualitative feedback I was talking about earlier regarding our art, and that it needed to be more innovative. And so we spent the next little while really taking that in and trying to synthesize how we could innovate in our art. And so we're still in many, many iterations every day. But at this point, we've found a really sweet, whimsical, inviting, warm, and cozy art style. And I hope it's enough to come back around. And I would love for my friends and family to go ahead and play this build now.
I want to share this link with Stephen Reed, who's tuned in. Stephen works in games and education as well. And then Daniel's tuned in from Chile. So shout out to you, Stephen and Daniel. Thank you for supporting the podcast. If you have any questions, let us know in the chat. We can see your questions. I'm sure that Tina and Karina are happy to answer those. But it's interesting that you have this art where it is now, and that you've designed it so that it appeals to kids. Can you talk a little bit more about like the opportunity for education in schools with games? Have you thought about that, or are you thinking more broadly? And if that's not something that you're willing to talk about yet, maybe we have a future podcast episode when you're ready.
So we can answer that from the business or the creative side. So I think I'd love to have Karina respond on the creative
side. Okay, me first. Okay, of course. Yeah. Throw me under the bus first. It's all good. It's all good. Wow, the challenging question. So we chose word games because there are many advantages to words that matter, and but it wasn't like making a education game wasn't our first goal. Our first goal was to look at the word genre and see what we could do. There's some efficiencies in a production when we use words, much like if we had playing cards where, it's already kind of set in terms of like what you would imagine a word Scrabble tile might look like. We could efficiently produce this. So there was an advantage from culture, what's happening now, and what we can do to innovate on the word. There's an advantage for production and how we might produce this game quickly and validate it very quickly, enhancing the things that really matter the most to this demographic of female gamers. And then the stealth learning was kind of like a fun coincidence, because as we were playtesting our game, we would come to these moments where we're playtesting with like two grown men sitting side by side, and they were tapping in words, and they were learning these words and galing at this really special little moment where we're like, oh, I didn't know that was a word. Oh, I knew that it was a word. And it was just this amazing back and forth. It was competitive, it was cooperative at the same time. So we knew that with words, much like with food, you share words and you share food, and it can bring people closer together. We knew that there was a stealth learning opportunity. So it wasn't our first goal. I just want to put that out there. Right. Mm-hmm. And as we kept, testing our art style, and we could see that our lore was fitting really well with a younger demographic. And so what we're doing now, long story short, we've identified that with kids, some schools may not have access to, or will, prohibit access to cell phones during the class, which is okay. And other schools are exploring what that might look like to introduce technology at an early stage. So we're looking for those schools that are wanting to test technology at the early stage. And a few things that we're doing to kind of embed ourselves into the curriculum is look at AI literacy, comprehension literacy, contextual language learning, things like that, things that we can glean from an average play session for someone who is obsessed with word games and wants a bit more adventure in their experience, to kind of sliding in, okay, what are we learning as developers from the experience, and how can we present that back into curriculum to provide as much value in the time that a child might have exposed to a cell phone. Yeah. We're trying to be very cautious here. I take education very seriously. And I want parents to trust us that we're going to make a good quality product that considers what kind of words are being displayed, how they're being displayed, what's the context of those words, and how might it fit into the future of AI and education?
Yeah. And I want, on a parallel note related to this, so when we look at what Crisscross Castles offers the potential for and how it's inherently designed, it's working based on a dictionary. That was one of the cool things we discovered. When you're playing word games and you come across new words that you want to know, what do? You tend to pop out of the game and go look up the dictionary, right? Well, now you don't have to do that with our game. It's right built into the game for you, both in the hint system as well as the reward system. You have this ability to go check the dictionary and look at things. So now imagine, instead of that beautiful whimsical art style we just saw, imagine I've suddenly skinned it for something like Peppa Pig or My Little Pony or something like that. And I pointed to a children's dictionary and we slightly simplify the rules a little bit in the narrative. Mm-hmm. Or I go the other direction. Now we think about something like Sin City. And we go very dark and gritty and cool and sexy and edgy. And now I'm going to point it to the Urban Slang Dictionary. Or we go knock on the door of Netflix and we say, this game belongs on your platform. Let's put the Stranger Things kids and enemies here in the game. Time to bring that brand in there. So we see a lot of white label and a lot of and then education offers that same opportunity, right? This opportunity to create very deep experiences that are fun, that are learnified.
It's funny you mentioned that, kind of bringing that into the classroom and especially on, I guess, cell phones, because I've not been in elementary school or I guess school at all in quite some time, but I would imagine that phone use inside of schools is frowned upon. And it reminds me, when I was in the 9th grade, my brother and I were teaching ourselves to Visual Basic so that we could actually start building our first video games on the TI-83 Plus graphing calculator. We were in magnet school and trigonometry 9th grade, so we needed the calculators. We weren't really using it. We were sort of using it for homework. We're mostly using it as a Game Boy. And we had built the loading screen. We were setting up all the variables and learning a lot about coding. But our trigonometry teacher didn't understand that we were learning to code. All she could recognize, what she could see, was that we were playing video games in class. Yeah. So while we were at lunch, she went by everyone's calculator at everyone's desk and permanently deleted everyone's games, which also permanently deleted the game we were building.
Oh no!
Oh wow!
So when you mentioned that, I would love to see a utopian future, hopefully in the near future, where to a certain degree there are kind of whitelisted apps and games that are on the phones for the students, and they're allowed to add them into the class, because how else are you going to get that engagement at scale? And why would you ask the school to invest in a bunch of tablets when everyone has a computer in their pocket?
Exactly. Yeah. Very good point. Yeah, I love it. Let's try and get on. In addition to getting on the back of your plane, the seat of the plane, we'll try and get into all your children's classrooms. That's cool.
Yeah. Lori said, relevant topic, nice topic, relevant. She's also in the education space. I believe she works with NASIF, so kind of the intersection of esports and education.
Nice.
You had mentioned the focus group from GDC. I wanted to get from your perspective, both of you, did you have experience, or let me say that differently, the companies that you worked for, did they do focus groups in the past before you started your own studio? Because I've never seen that as a gamer, like invitations to be in early access, especially at the stage of development that you all have your game at. That's not a normal thing, right?
Certainly not in AAA.
Yeah.
Certainly not in AAA, no. You might see it. Yeah, you'd see it much later stage than we're at. Much, much later stage in the game production cycle. The game would be close to finished. You might be putting some polish items in it. You might do some early focus group testing in late pre-production, but it would be pretty light, not intensive like we're doing.
Right.
You would be accessing, letting the world get at it. Mobile game development is a little different though, too.
Yeah. I mean, as an indie, we want to get something out there soon. I mean, I've seen what the the result or the consequence of not testing can be for an indie when you envelop yourself. And I mean, we're all very passionate about making good content, but sometimes we're not very good at marketing. We're not very good at A/B testing. We're not very good at finding our market niche quickly, and that can really burn someone. And so, I have a very strong philosophy as a former game designer, to make sure that we are checking in with our users and our community. At the end of the day, it really is about players first. And so I've had exposure to focus groups, although the one at GDC was a little bit more informal because we couldn't really tailor who would come to our booth. In a traditional focus group, we would, we have a checklist of, we want this person who, Bob and Joe and Jill from this city, and this is their age group, and these are the things they commonly like. There are tools online that are very useful for things like that. Playtest Cloud is one of them, and usertesting.com is another one of them, as an example, where you can hire user testers, and it will sort and rank them for you, and you can send them a build or anything, really, a website, to have some initial qualitative thoughts, subconscious thoughts come through, and which can be, highly valuable as a resource in the early stages. Like I said, we've got tired eyes now after 10 months of development. And it's really great when we can get a fresh set of eyes coming into the game to tell us, critical feedback, so that we don't burn ourselves getting to the finish line.
Yeah, I love this idea, fresh eyes. One of the first engineer who worked with us told us a term that I really loved, and it's called the handkerchief test. And so the idea is that you only use a handkerchief once, like a tissue once. You blow your nose and you throw it away, right? You only get one chance to get a first impression. And so while we've had people like yourself who've been playing the game for a little while, and we're excited to get your feedback as we iterate on it, the feedback we get, that initial impression, is invaluable to us, right? It really is.
So you set up a feedback form, right? You have is it fair to call it alpha? Like what stage would you describe your game in now?
We're closed alpha. So we're offering an opportunity for Android players to check out our game who have signed up, to check it out and answer a survey about the feedback. Later on, I can't commit to an exact timeline, but probably not later than early 2025, early next year, we will go into an open alpha. With the goal to, again, hit launch by May.
I'm going to bring up your website here briefly so people can see it.
Yeah, you can sign up directly from the website if you get the project link.
So I mentioned alpha. This is still pretty early. We've learned a lot about the word genre space, and we're still building our team as we go along. So there's a few amount of visual glitches. You may not hear all the sound. There might be some, incomplete game balancing. That is all natural and very normal for an alpha stage product. Once we go into beta, you see very few amount of bugs. Certainly nothing game breaking or crashing at that point. Beta is scheduled for next year in the spring of 2025. So that'll be fun. And we are on track. So hold on to your hats, folks. We've got a fun game coming up.
Awesome. And I was accidentally on the Contact Us page. So if you want to contact them, you can click on the Sign Me Up is for their, I think, newsletter and contact. But you want to go to simplysweetgames.ca/projects, and that brings you to the sign up form for the closed alpha.
Yeah. And you'll be able to sign up for the newsletter through that form as well. It saves them from having to go through two places to get into the closed alpha.
I actually enjoy, and I guess in some cases prefer, to play games before they're live, like the gold launch, or whatever the term is, when it's published, because I enjoy being helpful in finding or providing feedback that's helpful. It feels like I'm almost like a unofficial member of the team, right? And it's also like going on a scavenger hunt trying to find something, like, oh, is that a bug? Oh, and it gives me ideas. It just, again, my brother and I tried to make our game, I guess now 20 years ago. Wow. And it didn't work out. So this is me still trying to scratch the old game development itch.
I love that, Marcus. Thank you for sharing. Welcome too. We're going to send you a build, my friend. People like that are just so critical for a small startup. it's so vital once we find someone who likes us and what we have to offer in the premium game space to get your feedback. It really does matter at this moment where we can have a bit more agility to change things and really lean in to what you're saying. Um, at the end of the day, I love making games. They're not for me, but they're for our community to thrive and to build and to get excited about. So hearing from you as an early tester and saying that means everything. Thank you so much, Marcus.
I think the big challenge we see for a lot of indies is they're doing their passion projects, right? They're not thinking about what their audiences want. So I think that, the feedback is critical to ensure we stay true to the course.
That was always one of the goals for Malcolm and me when we built Project MQ. We wanted to support early access or focus group testing for the indie studios. We just couldn't get to that point. But yeah, if you have any questions, I'm excited to play it more and provide more feedback as you continue to iterate over it. You sent me the build for Android. I assume you're going to work on an iOS build. Have you also considered like a WebGL or I know you said Steam. So can you talk about your platform strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. The intention for launch is for us to be on mobile first. So we'll be iOS and Android, both Apple Store and on the Google Play Store. We'll also be very soon pursuing web portal and other gaming portal opportunities and white label opportunities. Immediately that we're finished the launch for beta, we'll be moving on to the Nintendo Switch platform. So we'll be porting the game over to Switch. We'll absolutely look at other platforms that make sense, including maybe even looking at an AR version of the game down the road.
Okay, that would be neat.
I think so. I could see how fun it would be myself to have a pair of goggles and sit on my cozy chair and I'm sort of half watching the TV and I'm half playing my thing in the air.
Yeah, I could definitely see this as a game you play. Like if you, I don't know, people wait for the bus anymore. I did when I was at college, waiting for the bus to go, it's college students, right? Going back and forth between class or exactly. I don't know, like
10 minutes after coffee before your next meeting.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. This seems like one of those types of games. What always gets me when I played the demo was like the first word is always easy. It's like that kind of, I don't know, like mousetrap you put yourself in after you've made that first word, trying to get through the end of the puzzle.
Well, that's the beauty of it. And, that's valuable to us on our development side. We're constantly finding ways to unstuck you. You know what I mean? Because we're aware as an alpha, there were probably a couple puzzles where you might get seriously, blocked from moving forward. And that's not the desired experience. We want you to have a fun, Zen-like, warm and cozy experience, that tickles the mind and makes you think about words differently. So it's good to hear that at least the first few worlds, first puzzles are balanced correctly. But I'm going to go take another look at that after this call and see.
Yeah, no,
what we can do for you.
I think that it's well balanced. I think, I've got 3 kids, so I couldn't probably lock in for more than 10 minutes or so in any one gameplay session. But I noticed, I think in the demo you have 8 levels, 7 levels?
We have 20 levels in our demo.
20 levels. Well, then that's how much screen time that I had to play.
No, it's perfect.
You have 20 levels.
10 minutes is perfect.
Can you talk about the increasing difficulty? Because the first couple levels do seem like kind of a tutorial levels, just so you get comfortable with the mechanics. And then it does seem to get more difficult, but it's hard for me to articulate like how it gets more challenging. It just gets more challenging.
Yeah. No, that's right. And, don't feel bad. 10 to 15 minutes is exactly what we want from your experience, something that you can just do to relax, but also to feel good and guilt-free, a couple times a day, maybe to help improve your vocabulary or pattern recognition, memory, things like that, is what I would recommend. But yeah, go sign up for the game build and you'll see what I mean. When we think of difficulty, we're actually just working on this right now. We're talking about the number of letters it takes to complete a word. There's 3-letter words, 4-letter words, 5-letter words, 6-letter words, 7-letter words, and we have 8-letter words in our game. And then the number of words inside of the puzzle itself. Because similar to crossword, some of the words will overlap with another word. And so that's where the strategy comes into play and where you can get a little stuck if you're
Yeah.
not thinking in advance and you have a really long word conjoined with a smaller word, conjoined with another long word. That's where we see some issues with
Yeah.
players when you're not really thinking of, oh, if I put an E there, then I can't make a word with this R or a Q or to that extent. So that's the basic baseline difficulty. But also, we're introducing something a bit fresh into the word genre by introducing the adventure and RPG elements of our game. So in the future realms, beyond the 20 levels that you have in the demo, there will be realms that have biomes. So you will be exposed to elements such as ice or fire or poison. There are also a select group of enemies from the illiterati who are working to steal all the letters and the words from the textbooks. So you're going to come across these different puzzles with the number of words and the size of the words, which matter. You'll also come across enemies, which will make your experience, you could end sooner if you're not watching your health. And there's also the elements of the biome, the PvE side of things. So we're really trying to hit difficulty in a different way when we think of the average word game. And I really hope that the players who are watching the podcast and listening to us enjoy, word adventure games like nothing you've seen before.
I know Tina had mentioned earlier something about co-play with parents and kids. Do you see any potential for like more traditional multiplayer, like multi-device multiplayer, or maybe even as I continue to play the game, I just started to envision Scrabble. Like I
Yeah,
could see like a competitive
exactly.
mode where like
Yes.
now there's all these tiles and
Right.
I don't know.
Yes, exactly. I that was originally my idea. I got told scope creep, calm down. But yes, I completely agree. I love the idea of co-op play. So think about it this way: you could do two things. It could be you and me against the ogre, so we're cooperative. Or it can be competitive. We're both trying to solve the puzzle with the highest number of points for the same puzzle, almost esports style.
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of different options here for cooperative and competitive play, but cooperative in particular appeals to me. And I think it's coach co-op too, right? So we saw this idea, people see it and they go, oh, I play with this with my nephew or my granddaughter or my child, or, it's the kind of thing that you might sit down for 15 minutes on the couch with your kids curled up beside you and you play together, right? So I really, this idea of this style of cooperative play also appeals to me.
Yeah.
Cooperative for sure is an avenue we'd love to explore. Something that could be even cross-platform in the far future would be a dream to have a game that's all about cooperating and defending the castle from illiteracy and from the darkness of ignorance. I think could be really, really fun. We need a little bit more focus testing, and I say this facetiously because our game is meant to be very zen and whimsical and inviting. Because as a word game, we don't want you to be too stressed out or anxious. It should be a pleasant experience where you can do a little bit of learning on the side, and that is very wholesome. So I'd love to know for any word game players if they prefer competitive games or cooperative games more so, and then we'll skew towards what their preference is.
Yeah. You just kind of listen to the customer, right? You're building a product for the customer,
Totally.
so you're trying to get that feedback. I have some coding games on my phone that my kids will play, and then there's like a certain threshold where they need my help, and I can see like it's now too difficult for them, and they're no longer learning; they're just being upset. So I definitely appreciate you keep taking that into consideration. You mentioned, I guess you got a tentative timeline of when you'd like to launch the full game. If you don't mind sharing a little bit about, what you're looking for in prospective publisher or investor partnerships, is that something that you all are still entertaining?
Yes, absolutely. We're actively seeking angel investment opportunities right now. I'm excited to share that I closed due diligence on an angel investor this afternoon. Thank you. Yes, pretty exciting. So we have been successful with some early angel investment fundraising, but we're continuing to do that to ensure we can hit a strong launch. We've also been pursuing fundraising through things like the Canada Media Fund. So in Canada, we have a variety of programs and grants that we can be eligible for, and we're pursuing as many of them as possible. They offer us non-diluted and other benefits, non-diluted funding and other benefits.
I wish there was some of that here in the U.S. As I've seen, there's a handful of states do things like that. Georgia, in particular, as an extension of the grants and tax incentive they've always provided to, like, not always, but they have been providing for years to film studios. But we don't have that I've seen, and I looked for years, especially when my brother and I were building Project MQ, like funding around software development geared closer to gaming and gaming grants.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a big opportunity. There's some going on in Europe as well, but it's if we want to even the playing field and get some really great creative talent happening, I think we need to do a better job of supporting the talent.
So you mentioned that you have QA in, I think you said Romania.
That's right, in Bucharest.
Any interest or plans for building the team and growing it here in the U.S.? Where do you think the next growth opportunities are for your team?
Yeah. As far as employment, we will stay within Canada for a variety of reasons, mostly tax incentives.
Right.
So it makes sense for employees, at least in the foreseeable future, that they will all be hired in Canada. Because we're a remote first team, we don't mind hiring across Canada. We might tend to be focused in British Columbia, but it's fine if we would hire all across Canada. Contractors and external partners and development partners, we would consider global. There's certainly some regions that I'm more familiar with working with. And so what are we thinking about? We're thinking about technical infrastructure. So Romania, for example, has a really strong internet and technology infrastructure throughout the entire country, really excellent technical schools. I know the culture very well because I lived there for 3 years as an expat. And so there's a lot of variety of reasons why it makes sense for us to use them as a potential partner, including cost of doing business being much significantly lower than North America.
Okay. Yeah, we have inflation, something crazy here.
It is something we need to think about, right? Because I mean, we're not going to be a nonprofit. I would love to see, we have a lot of altruistic and specific mission related things we want to do that are positive for the industry and for women who we want to, be a good example for. But yes, we're still a for-profit. We still have to think about, being a sustainable company. And part of that is the global advantage.
Okay. Well, and so you freelancers will continue to be, or contractors will continue to be a significant part of your business model as you grow?
I would say yes. When, again, so as we all know, or those in the game development industry know, we see these production cycles, right? And so as we scale into full production, as we look to need a bunch of more artists and engineers, if we need to scale up for quality assurance in other areas, if we look for localization, as we look for expertise that's outside of our core teams, strong areas of expertise, those are all opportunities to look at external partnerships.
Okay.
So scaling sustainably is the main reason, though.
That makes sense. And what are your goals for the rest of the year, right? We're in Q4. I think we're in Q4. Yep. Rolling into Halloween next week and into the rest of November and December. What are you most excited about getting accomplished between here and the end of the year?
2 things for me. We're successful with closed alpha to ready us for open alpha.
Mm-hmm.
And we raised enough money to get us to launch.
Okay.
That's my goal. Would you add any more from that, Karina?
Those are pretty solid goals. We really want to keep honing in on that audience and understanding our segment as much as we can, forming a strong relationship with our community. And as soon as closed alpha ships and we get some delicious feedback in, we're going to take all that feedback and dismantle it and put it back into the game. And I'm really looking forward to delighting users after that. From those learnings, I would love to continue building a book of business and figuring out how do we do things in our way? How do we figure out the process?
So with more feedback from I guess especially kids be helpful? Because I've done some volunteering with, I don't know if you're familiar with Junior Achievement. I think they're global, but there's one here in Tampa Bay that I've done some work with over the years, and I think that they would love to introduce educational fun games to the students.
We would love to expect. So to me, and I think Karina agrees, we want a diversity of people checking out our game. It's very important that we see and hear diverse perspectives in age range and demographics of where they live, what their needs are, what their accessibility needs might be. And an example, we're having a conversation in about 2 weeks with an organization that's going to help us with testing related to autism. We have a number of testers who have who signed up who've self-identified as having dyslexia. Their feedback will be critical in helping us understand what can we do to make the game a little bit more accessible and a little bit more pleasant and a safe experience for them.
It would be a dream. We believe that Crisscross Castle, when it hits the market, it's going to stay. It's going to have staying power in the market. So within that duration of time, it would be a dream to have, my goal is at least 1,000 students under the age of 15 to come playtest our game and provide us some qualitative feedback.
Okay. Well, Laurie has really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah.
If you're certainly invited to connect with them, I'm happy to connect you to them after the show as well. If that's going to be helpful, I think Nevada somewhere. My geography is terrible.
Albuquerque, New Mexico, according
New
to
Mexico, so close.
Thank you, Lori.
So
Thank you,
close.
Lori.
I wouldn't have known that was close based on my geography. So there.
Thinking into next week, do you have any plans for cool costumes for Halloween?
I'm going to be doing Witches on the Water. So Osoyoos has a tradition where a lot of women get dressed up as witches, and a bunch of them get on their paddle boards or their kayaks, and some of them just walk. And then we're going to do a witch's dance at the end. So that's the plan for the weekend for me.
How about you, Karina?
That's cool. I'm going to be dressing up my dog as a little big bad wolf, and we'll try to be 3 little piggies.
Okay. I'm still trying to put this together, but I don't know if you've played Dave the Diver.
Oh, yes.
I would like to cosplay Bancho.
Nice.
So we'll see. I don't have a good track record with knives. You might not be able to see it on this hand. I cut myself here and here with a butcher knife when I was in college because I don't know. We froze a watermelon and then tried to cut it with a butcher knife. I think I had a couple of drinks beforehand, and so I wasn't making quality decisions. But I had to get stitches. So my family's always like, "Oh, Marcus, don't play with knives." I'm like, okay, look, I'm not 10. But I also wasn't 10 when I had to go to the hospital, so that's fair. So yeah,
with plastic.
yeah, exactly. So we'll see. We'll see if I can make that happen between here and next Thursday. I will send it to you, and if it may end up taking a couple extra weeks, and it's November, but I'll be sure to share it with you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
This has been a wonderful conversation.
Yes.
Before we go, I want to give you an opportunity to let everybody know where they can find, follow, and support you and the studio. So please share that.
Yes, absolutely. So one thing that we would love you to do is follow us on Instagram if you can, and also on Facebook. And the reason for that is that it's going to help us with raising funds and for building credibility in our brand. So if you could do that, that would be amazing. On our website, you're welcome again to sign up and join us for the play test. That would also be spectacular.
Let me share that so they can see it. So this is
the link
the Instagrams.
to the Facebook page as well here for you. There you go.
All right, so that's SSG_simply_sweet. Is that the same across Instagram and Facebook?
Yeah, it's linked up to Facebook, and it's Simply Sweet Games on Facebook as well, and simplysweetgames.ca if you want to go to the website and sign up for the playtest or our newsletter.
All right. And then where can they follow both of you? Where are you most active? I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, which is how I connected to Tina. I was already connected to Karina on Twitter, but where are you spending most time?
I'm spending most of my time usually on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a pretty easy place to find me because I'm more the professional conversations, but absolutely happy to have anybody reach out who's interested.
Okay. How about you, Karina?
Oh, she muted. Karina, you're muted.
Oh, rookie mistake. Womp womp. I am most active on LinkedIn and email if you need to find me.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'm happy to make any introductions to schools or maybe prospective investors if they're interested, or I can find them or they'll respond to my message. I don't know if you've seen LinkedIn messages can get kind of spammy. So,
Yes.
It's
Absolutely.
become less useful than it used to be.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to help any way that I can. Thank you both so much for your time.
Thank you.
Can't wait to play the game again some more and get my kids to play it. They're always looking for opportunities to play video games. Whatever I can have them learn something and they can play video games, it's a win-win for everybody.
There you go. Thank you so much for inviting us to the conversation, Marcus.
All right. And thank you all for joining us for this episode. We'll see you again next Thursday for episode 11. Until then,